One of the big things that's coming up at this meeting, I believe, is this idea of we create these technologies to benefit the many people around the world who need them. We are behind in terms of having these discussions. And now is the time when we really have to get serious about it.
Our coverage of Meeting on the Med in Rome is kindly sponsored by Cellares. I am Federico Cittrich, reporting for Onyx live here at the Meeting on the Med in Rome. Today I am with Professor Kevin FitzGerald, Chair of the Department of Medical Humanities and Associate Professor at Creighton University. Professor, good morning.
Good morning. Great to be with you. I'm obviously a Jesuit priest. I'm at Creighton University. My background is in molecular genetics, mostly cancer genetics, but also bioethics. I teach and do administration at Creighton, but I'm also involved with the Pontifical Academy for Life, which is the bioethics group at the Vatican. And I've been involved with them for over 20 years now.
The field of cell and gene therapy is growing really fast. So as someone focused also on the medical humanities, how do you view this rapid progress?
So on the one hand, part of me says it's about time. We've been talking about this for 40 years, right? We're going to do all these great and wonderful things. And now, in one way, thankfully, the technology is finally there. But also now, all the sort of ethical and social issues that we were discussing for the past 40 years are now upon us. And in spite of having all that time to talk about this, in many ways, we're still not ready. And one of the big things that's coming up at this meeting, I believe, is this idea of we create these technologies to benefit the many people around the world who need them. But very few people at the moment have access to them, both due to logistical reasons, but also a lot financial reasons. And so these are some of the major issues that we still have to wrestle with in order to get to where it is we say we want to go.
Professor, what do you think about informed consent in a field where long-term outcomes are sometimes not yet fully understood?
Yeah, and I think that's a great question. And it is something we have looked at intensely over the last few years in particular, because now we're applying these technologies. So in the United States, at least in some of our protocols, we write into the informed consent form and the whole process, the honest communication that we can't tell you all the possible outcomes because we don't know. It's never been done before, right? So I think that's extremely important to be very clear up front with patients and their families that there's a lot about this that we just don't know.
As these therapies expand also towards beyond the rare diseases and also to broader populations and diseases that get into broader populations, do you think that more and different ethical challenges emerge?
Well, some, yes. And fascinating, the ones, of course, that are coming up right now are sickle cell disease, right? That is not a rare disease. Certainly in parts of the world, it's relatively common. But in those parts of the world, it's also impossible to access because right now, those treatments would cost about $2 million US. So how do we even envision bringing these technologies, which over the course of an individual's lifetime, save money for both the health systems and the countries? But it's such an upfront cost that it's an amazing challenge right now to even sort of wrap one's mind around. Again, not necessarily something we took into consideration over the last 40 years because didn't know it was going to have a $2 million price tag. Probably could have anticipated that, but we didn't. But now that that is with us, it does force us to say, how are we going to go about making sure that the technologies get to the people who need them? When you're talking ultra rare, sure, it's a smaller population spread around the world. But we're going to start moving into other areas, other diseases that are much, much more prevalent. And they may be prevalent in populations because of healthcare discrepancies over the years that are not the ones that have the resources to necessarily use those.
And given what we've been discussing so far, do you think that there's a specific question or more specific questions that the industry should be asking itself more?
So I would say there's multiple questions. This is just like the technology. There are some we're facing now and some we're not even thinking about yet because they haven't popped up, right? So I think one of the things, if there's a blanket kind of approach that we should take, it's the approach that we are behind in terms of having these discussions. We, the biotech industry and the professors and all that, can't even anticipate all of the questions that may come up. But if we engage broadly with the public, if we reach out to these communities around the world and ask them, what are your concerns? What are your hopes and your fears? We'll hear stuff that we ourselves have not thought of. And that's part of, I think, the precedent we want to set going forward. We want to have that robust global engagement because A, we're going to discover new technologies that are going to be able to do things that we're not yet able to do. And those are B, going to raise more questions that we don't yet think about. But some of these groups may already be thinking about things like that in different ways than ourselves. So if we can set that precedent, I think we can create a new way of approaching these things that will then also answer your other problem of saying, well, there'll be just some things we don't know. If everybody's invested together and saying, yes, we're on this journey together and we know things will pop up that we can't anticipate, then I think we'll do a much better job when those things happen.
And do you think that conferences or meetings such as MOMED can help with that? Do you think that the people here can start to, ask those questions because of these conferences?
So I'd say it's already helped in two ways at this conference. One, it's helped because the questions have come up and now people are aware of them and they're thinking about how can we deal with these situations. The second way it's already helped is the recognition that they can't do it alone. They have to partner. And one of the partners that we're working with right now is one of my partners, is the Vatican. And the Vatican is a global institution. It has connections everywhere in the world. So if you want to have a global conversation, you need to partner with global institutions. And so that partnership is already underway.
Just, to actually continue on this route, more in general, how do you think that the Vatican could have helped also the evolution of scientific progress? Because I think it's a topic that is very interesting, the one about religion and science.
Yeah, it's been debated back and forth. I would argue now the historians have done a much better job in terms of getting away from the myth that religion and science are not compatible, right? And it was a myth that came out of a variety of political and intellectual trajectories that were going on in the 20th and early 21st centuries. What we recognize now is, at least in the Catholic Church for sure, the church was very supportive of scientific research. In many centuries, it was the primary supporter of scientific research. So this idea that there is this sort of intrinsic combat is just nonsense, right? That comes from other political and, as I mentioned, sort of social dynamics. So we can build easily a relationship that will be productive and actually beneficial for both sides going forward.
Professor, just to sum it up, if you had to pick the most important ethical issue in the field, what would it be?
It would be the public engagement. It would be the fact that we keep saying we need to do it, but we haven't done it. And now is the time when we really have to get serious about it.
Professor, thank you very much for your time and for your wonderful insight.
Certainly. Thank you so much.